live video. Now I'm going to be talking today, we'll continue the theme of Jack the Ripper, which I started last week. In fact, with all the publicity, that the alleged discovery of the perpetrator, and so now I'm going to be continuing it. Now, one thing I've got to actually to state is this: as far as I'm concerned, what is most important with anything of this nature is that it is the victim. The victims are the most important, and it's not who the perpetrator may or may not have been, or maybe who's being accused of being a perpetrator. The victims are always the most important. What I'm going to try and do into this is to actually give back the victims some of their identity, or attempting to give back some of their identity to the victims of these crimes. Now, the first thing, when I did my first video on this, what I tried to do was describe the circumstances that existed in this part of London at the time of these killings. And so that I think is really important, and also to see how the outside world viewed people in this area. And then yesterday, what I attempted to do was to describe why the press took such an interest in this, and I'm now convinced it is linked, utterly convinced it's linked to the fact that there were so many people who were by this time adults or young adults or in the 20s who could now read. So we reached a point where literacy was approaching 100%. Approaching, I say, because it was never claimed to be 100%. Only communist countries claimed to have 100% literacy, and the reason that communist countries had 100% literacy is because dyslexia didn't occur there. Ha ha. So that's just another way which propaganda works. But when I say approaching 100%, I presume it was still in the 90s. I'm sure somebody's going to write in and say, well, my great grandparents couldn't read, or something like that. Yeah, I'm certain that there were people. Indeed, we know that of the victims, of course, the victims, with the exception of the last one, were of an age, they were born well before 1865. So I'm saying that people who were born 1865 and above, then they and onwards, they were literate, or at least they went to school, which hopefully would have taught them literacy. Now, the first victim is actually the third one, if that makes any sense. The first victim of the Whitechapel murderer that we now know to be was the lady called Polly Nichols. Sorry, I've got my. I'm sorry, getting my microphone's coming back on me, and so she, Polly was her nickname, and it was a name sort of that was given to her. She was somebody who was born in the area. Probably don't really know where she was born. She was probably in the. She could have been born in Fleet Street or just off Fleet Street, where the newspapers used to be published. And but she was born the 26th of August. 1845, and unfortunately when she died, they even got the date, they got her age wrong. She was 43. She was 5 days beyond her 43rd birthday, but on her grave it says she was 42. So her father was a locksmith and her mother was a laundress. And so father later became a blacksmith. So you can see he's working class people. The family had 3 children, and she was the middle child. As was expected in those days, she got married at the age of 18, and she married a printer's machinist, William Nichols, and so that was on the 16th of January 1864. And so we've got these documents all exist. We also know where they lived. Now, the couple themselves had 5 children. Now, in 1879, the last child was born, and he was called Henry. But it was the nurse, the midwife who assisted at the birth, had an affair with Mr. Nichols, William Nichols, and that is Aunt Mary Ann Nichols's, or Polly Nichols' father accused his son-in-law of that being the cause of their separation. However, the son-in-law, William Nichols, he said no. He said he stayed with his wife for 3 years after this relationship. Now, in 1880, we know that they were living off the Blackfriars Road, and they were paying a weekly rent of 5 shillings and 9 pence. Now, we've got the rents, and the reason I actually mention the rents and I talk about the money, because this is indicative of the quality of life and the poverty that existed. Now, that in today's money is 27.5 pence. We don't have half pences now. We haven't had them now for 40 years. But that is the equivalent of well over £1,000 a month in today's money. So, if we put times it by 100, I know that people actually even think it's even greater than 100. It's always difficult actually to use historical money and put it in today's because it depends how you're actually going to do it, because the values of things actually changes. But if we say approximately 100, there's even those that have even claimed it up to 200. But anyway, now, whilst they were there in Blackfriars Road, they separated, and William took with him 4 of the children, presumably the oldest, who was by then 14 years old, might have actually gone their own way. So, and now this situation here, which is really important, I think, to understand that the surrounding things, what was happening is the condition that women found themselves in. And now the husband accused his wife of being a drunk. That may well have been the case. She may have taken to drink, and certainly some of the other victims, they had taken to drink, and the drink was the cause of the separation. Whether it was or not, in this case, we can't say. But certainly we know that as from this time, Polly Nichols was having problems with the police. This was due to things like drunkenness and bad behavior in the streets, but also for prostitution, which was illegal at the time. Now, we know that in 1881 she was in Lambeth Workhouse. Now, a previous address had been in southeastern London, so that's south of the river. Lambeth is also south of the river, and when she was in the workhouse, she described herself as a charwoman. Now, today, I think the word charwoman, and correct me if anybody thinks this is wrong. In fact, write down what you think charwoman means. Okay, I think it means a woman who makes the tea. But then it clearly it meant somebody who was a domestic servant, but not a live-in domestic servant. That was somebody who'd go to somebody's house, maybe do some cleaner. Okay, right. So okay, I thought a charwoman was the one who made the tea. Okay, well, I made a mistake. Yeah, it's the cleaner. It's somebody who goes round and does work and then leaves. And so it's not, it may actually at the time they have made food or something like that, but the same things that servants would do, but without actually living on the premises. So that is not a dishonorable job by how things were considered actually at the time. And anyway, we also know that she went back to her father. And I think that what happened was this, that she went back to live with her father. Her father got cheesed off, had a go at her husband, and that was when the disagreement between the two actually happened. That's my opinion. I don't know. I'm just sort of suggesting that for the moment. Now, the father also lived south of the river by this time. Now, William Nichols had to support his wife. Because that's the way the law worked, and he allowed her 5 shillings a week. So 5 shillings, 25 pence a week. So that's not, it's a bit less than what they'd previously been paying for the home in the Peabody buildings. Oh, I should also point out, which I didn't point out, that I think the previous accommodation, there is still something called the Peabody Trust, which gives subsidized non-market rate accommodation, or cheaper accommodation. So it's done as a sort of charitable institution. I mean, obviously it's still paying rent, and they were still paying a fair whack of rent, but it possibly wasn't a market rent at the time. Now, William got notice that his wife was working as a prostitute, and then he ceased to pay the money. And when she reported this to the authorities, they attempted to collect the money, but he said that she had deserted the family and leaving him with the kids, and she was living with another man, and she was earning money immorally, as it was considered then, and therefore, as she was earning money through illicit means, he didn't have to pay for her. And so, as he didn't have to pay for her, these 5 shillings a week, which admittedly wouldn't have gone all that far, but it would have been far better than what was actually happening later. Now, as from this moment, she spent her life living in workhouses and boarding houses. Now, a workhouse was something, it was a place where people, it's a charitable institution, and sorry, that's not right to say charitable, but it was an institution provided by local authorities as from around 1830, if memory serves me correctly, which allowed people who had nowhere else to go, they could stay there. And many people in their old age ended up in workhouses. Now, the idea of the workhouse was it was meant to give you a roof over your head, but it was meant to be so unpleasant that you'd never want to go back there. So you'd want to get out as soon as possible. Now, you can imagine the state that the old people were in, were destitute maybe, because they, for obvious reasons, they're living from hand to mouth, and then when they no longer work, and what condition they would be. So these workhouses were pretty unpleasant places to be. There was also the lodging houses, which I tried to describe a couple of days ago, and these lodging houses, which could offer very basic accommodation and paid for on a nightly basis. Yes, as Colin just has pointed out, that the people in the workhouses had to work. So they were given jobs. It could have been on the administration of the workhouse, but it could be other things, which then the people would, for example, in East London, there could be ships coming in. So there's things related to the shipping, like making ropes and sacks and things like this, packaging materials, and that would be given to the workhouses, and then the workhouses would expect the people in them to do it in order to pay for their board and lodgings. So, so this is how she was living. In December of 1887, we know that she was sleeping rough in Trafalgar Square, in the very centre of London, a few hundred metres from Parliament. And there was a clearance of in Trafalgar Square following social problems. It was a major riot there, and on the 19th of December, she was picked up and ordered back to the workhouse, and she went there. Now, we know that in April 1888 that she got a job somewhere. She was working at as a domestic servant, and so that, and she also a letter survived that she wrote to her father to say that she was very pleased. Please put that here. I just write to say you that you will be glad to know that I've settled in my new place and it's going right all to now. My people went out yesterday and have not returned, so I'm in charge. There's a grand place inside with trees and gardens back and front. All has been newly done up. They are teetotalers and religious, so I ought to get on. There are nice people and I have not too much to do. I hope you're all right and the boy has work. So goodbye for the present. From yours truly, Polly. So anyway, so she's got a good job now. She's really happy, she says, But guess why it all goes wrong? And well, I think it's pretty obvious. Uh, I don't really know why it went wrong, but they were teetotalers. She was an alcoholic. Well, it wasn't actually going to work out. And so she was there for only 3 months. And she left. She stole clothing worth £3 10 shillings. And she found out this. I think the father found this out when he had a postcard that he'd sent his daughter returned. So what we do know that by the summer, she was then in one of the common lodging houses in Spitalfields in Thrall Street. So that's one of the streets where the poorest of the poor actually lived. Pretty horrendous place to be. She from Thrall Street, she moved to Flower and Dean Street on the 24th of August, 1888. So right now. As I understand it, August 1888, or at least the end of it, wasn't very good. The weather sort of declined really quickly, and it was already a bit on the cold side. Of course, it doesn't really get that way now, but then again, the temperatures got warmer, so that does explain it. Now, on the 30th of August, in the evening, 2300 hours, she was out. We know that she was in there's a pub in Brick Lane called the Frying Pan. She left that at around midnight. Licensing regulations hadn't actually yet come in, so the licensing laws meant that you had to close the pubs at 10:30 or 11 o'clock. I think it depends on what part of the country you were in. And anyway, so at around 01:20 in the morning, she went back to her lodging house, but she was there for nearly an hour, and the lodging house keeper caught her there, and he wanted the 4p, 2p in today's money, to bring back to pay for her lodging for that night. Anyway, so she said she didn't have the money. So the lodging house keeper told her to get out. He had kicked her out, and there was probably lots of people who tried to actually stay in premises such as this. I mean, it's not in the circumstances. I know that 4p doesn't sound a 2p into putting in today's money, or £2 if you like in today's value. Doesn't sound a great deal of money, but these people were absolutely desperate. Let's remember that they carried all their stuff on them, and this is something which I'll probably get to. Anyway, she said she just got from somewhere a black bonnet. It was trimmed with velvet, and she said this: "I'll soon get my DOS money," DOS meaning sleeping money. "See what a jolly bonnet I've got now." It's as if this bonnet would then attract people, clients to her. Now, she was seen on 2:30 in the morning by a friend called Emily Holland, and she was an hour. And but this lady said the following: that she was drunk, and this lady attempted to persuade her to come back to the lodging house with her, but she said no. She said this: "I've had my lodging money 3 times today, and I've spent it." So she believed that she'd find a client. Now, the price of the service is believed to have been around 3p in money then, so it's 1 penny, a pound if you like. The lodging was 4. Maybe she had the idea of charging some overtime or something. But anyway, so that was the last time she was seen by anyone. Now, at 3:40 in the morning, that's to say, what, 2 hours, an hour or so later, one person whose name was Charles Allen Cross, he was born Charles Lechmere, he saw something on Bucks Road, Durwood Street today, and he thought it was a tarpaulin, and he thought, that'd be handy. I'll take that. It'll be useful for my wagon. He was in the haulage business. He used to work for a haulage company. He worked for Pickford's, who I can remember as the sort of delivering chairs and things of this nature. And then he went to the body, and he seemed to feel that it was. He realized that it was a body. First, he seemed to think that the person, it was just a drunk, and there was probably drunks lying all over the place. Probably, if you go to Munich during the beer fest, then you see people sleeping all over the place. It was probably like that. Anybody who's been to any communist country will see, drunks all over the place. So it wasn't. I don't think in the East End this would have been an uncommon sight. And anyway. But he saw that it was a lady. There was somebody else in the street as well. It was another cart driver on his way to work. His name was Robert Paul, and Charles called him over. I think Robert Paul was a bit frightened of him initially, but now they discussed the matter. They believed that the woman was dead, and or they couldn't tell she was unconscious or not. I mean, again, bear in mind that the problem with the drunks. Anyway, but because they didn't want to be late for work. And now this might sound like a really weak excuse, but bear in mind, if they're living in that area, they're not earning a lot of cash, and they certainly don't want to lose work and then be destitute themselves. So they said that they would inform the police if they passed one. Anyway, they did find a policeman. His name's Jonas Mitzen, and they said words to the effect of, "She looks to me to be either dead or drunk, but I believe she's dead." And then they went to work, leaving the policeman to go there. In the meantime, another police officer actually found the body, and he called for Dr. Llewellyn, who was quite famous in various films because of it, and he came over to see it. Now, one thing that's happened is that in recent years, this Lechmere, Charles Cross, has been accused of having been Jack the Ripper. I don't really quite follow the logic to this, but I suppose he just killed somebody and then he sees somebody else and then he pretends he didn't kill them. I mean, that's happened many times before, but that would be the logic, I think, to that. Anyway, so this news spread very quickly. Bear in mind that there was massive overpopulation in this area, and crowds gathered outside, and there was a great deal of interest. And the post-mortem was held. The body was moved to the mortuary very, very quickly, and post-mortem was held quite quickly. And this showed that the wounds which had been given to the victim, and which are, I would say, considerably different to those given to what was said to be the first two victims of the Whitechapel murderer. But then again, I don't really know about these things. I mean, the descriptions from the mortuary and indeed all the inquests are actually online. But the doctor himself thought that the wounds would have taken 4 to 5 minutes to actually perform. Now, whether or not it was a person with medical knowledge or not, that we don't know. Now, the husband actually was found, and he was called to the mortuary, and he said the following. He identified that was his wife, and he said, "I forgive you as you are for what you have been to me." Now, the inquest was held as from the 1st yeah, sorry, I saw that. Yes, the 1st of September. Inquest was held over 3 days. It was reported in various newspapers, including the Times and the Daily Telegraph, amongst others. But of course, it was the scandal sheets like the Star, which I may mention, or the Pall Mall Gazette, which made the most of it. Anyway, good. So I think I'll sort of leave that one at that one, but I'll come to these questions. Now, Colin, I'm going to answer first, actually. There's someone posting on here which needs to be blocked. Yes, I can see that, actually. And I think I'll I'll leave that one actually, Colin. It's always a bit difficult to actually block people on live things. If I'm actually holding a gimbal in my hand, it's easier to do it because I've got a hand free at the moment. Unfortunately, I'm holding the telephone with my hands. That makes it a bit more awkward. Right, so actually I'll go through these comments here. We've got this person here, Occidental Advocate, who's made comments before, and he claims Aaron Kosminski, aka Jack the Ripper, Polish-born Jew. So he's got proof, but unfortunately, he's not providing the proof that this Aaron Kosminski was Jack the Ripper. Now, the thing with this is these accusations that are made against this person just don't make any sense. I mean, it's not based on evidence. Now, I do appreciate that the person here is a racist, so he doesn't need to use any proof for anything because his racism is the proof in itself for him. But I do not believe, and now this DNA is clearly a hoax. And the thing is this: Aaron Kosminski, if he'd been under police observation, as even this Mr. Edwards, who wrote the book, claims, then he would have been arrested, and he wasn't. And that's the number one thing. And the number two is that the last victim was killed in her own property. Now, this was somebody who's Aaron Kosminski was somebody who was quite well known. He used to eat off the gutter. He wouldn't eat normal food, but he had voices in his head telling him to eat off the gutter. So he's quite clearly crazy. I don't even know if you could even speak English. But oh no, sorry, he must have been able to speak English because he was in court. Sorry, he was in court for, can't remember what it was now, forgotten. It'll come back to me. But anyway, he had been in court, and a judge made a ruling, and so there was no case of that. So, but it's nothing to do with offences of this nature. And I think it was something to do with his dog, if I remember rightly. The dog was off a leash or something like that. Whatever. Anyway, and no, it was a dog. It was the dog. The dog was off the leash. Now, Aaron's family, they were people who actually got on. I mean, they came from the Kwadava area, Ko area, and they then came to Britain. Now, I also see that this Mr. Occidental Advocate, who claims he doesn't like communism, but he's a Putin supporter, so it doesn't make much sense in itself, says he was Polish-born. He wasn't Polish-born because Poland didn't exist then. He was Russian-born in Russia. Poland was then under Russian occupation. And so I don't know why I say he was Polish-born Jew. He was a Jew who happened to be born in Russia, who left Russia because of the anti-Semitism there and the pogroms which happened following the murder of Alexander II, the Tsar. So that is, I don't believe that at all. Another thing against Aaron Kosminski is this. Sorry, I started to say this. The final murder took place in someone's home, in the home Maria Jeanette Kelly, and she invited she invited the person in. So that if it's him, then we have to believe that she invited a crazy person into the house. That's number one. Or two, he forced an entry into there, but based on the descriptions given how crazy he was, he wouldn't be able to do that. Or he had the key to get in because the key was apparently lost. Now, there was a way of getting into the place where she lived, and that was by putting a hand through the door and opening it. But then he would have to actually know that. So I just cannot believe this. I mean, somebody like Aaron Kosminski would have been noted. Not only that, because of his mental state, he would have had difficulty in approaching these women. These women had to feel sufficiently secure with the person they were with to actually go into a dark alley to do whatever they were going to do there. And somebody who was crazy and known to be crazy is not the sort of person that would do it, no matter how desperate they were, in my opinion. Now, I've just described the first victim there who needed to get the money, to get her DOS money, sleeping money, for the for the lodging house. Anyway, so I can't that. Right. Colin mentions picking oakum must have been awful. Yeah, these are sort of jobs that people are given in their to do. David makes a very good point here. Maybe they were too drunk to be rational. Yeah, I suppose that could have happened in the. Okay, we've got this victim was the worst for drink. That we know from the witness. Maybe, yeah. I suppose that is possible. It is likely that the this murder, okay, was in this in there was a sort of the garage or the stable, I should say, appears it may have appeared to be open slightly, or it could have been the shadow, the way it fell on there, which it's hard. It must have been done extremely quickly. Anyway, and now blaming Aaron Cosmin, well, maybe he could do it quickly. I don't know. But the thing is this: why wasn't he arrested? I mean, there was lots of people were arrested, lots of people were charged, and the fact that I'm not saying the person wasn't Jewish. I mean, it's perfectly possible he could have been Jewish, given the amount of people who are living there, and this was a largely Jewish area, and it had to be somebody who's locals and knew the way through the alleys and all of this type of thing around there. But the fact that we've got somebody like this making this comment, who is an anti-Semite, somebody's racism doesn't mean to say that that's proof of nothing. Anyway, so yeah, there's a number of comments here by somebody who thinks probably gone away. And anyway. So, Gary says, took me years to develop my estuary accent after being born middle class in Essex, in a weird reverse of My Fair Lady. Right. Estuary accent, I presume that means the Thames estuary accent, and I know that Gary comes from Southend, so that is Gary's had to develop his own accent. So in the film My Fair Lady, there was a lady who was born, I think, in the East End, or was it South London? I can't remember. I haven't actually seen it. And then she's taught to speak very eloquently with a very upper class accent. And I haven't seen the film, but I know there's one bit where she goes to the races and actually shows her true colours. And therefore, Gary, I don't know if Gary's why he made that comment. In my case, it's because I used to have a rather well, you can still tell where I come from, but my accent is no longer what it was. Yeah. Colin says the following: is it possible that she was already passed out through drink when she was murdered? You know what? As far that is possible. Yeah, I would have thought so, because what we do know from the inquest, which I didn't read out, but one of the things that makes the Mr. Cross a suspect, I think, is the fact that the police saw that she was still bleeding, and but that's a really good argument there, Colin. I must admit I hadn't actually thought of that one before. So if the person was, I'm sure they can tell now if the person was drunk when they, but then they couldn't have done that. So it could have been, yeah, she could well have been drunk. So drunk she wouldn't have known what was happening. The thing about medical knowledge, actually bringing this one up, I just think it was just a few lucky stabs and he managed to pull out certain parts of the body. I mean, if you stab somebody in the lower part of the torso, and I suppose then you can just put your hand in and pull out the entrails. So I suppose that's not terribly difficult. I think the idea that it's taken away parts of the body, it just doesn't, to me, just doesn't make any sense. So that could have been done by somebody who was crazy, I think. Okay, well, thanks very much for listening. I hope I've tried to make my point here. The point being this is that this was the fate of a woman who couldn't stay with her husband because she left her husband because of drink, and she ended up in a place like this, having to look for clients for her DOS money, but at the same time, she had to go to the pub to get herself sloshed on gin, probably, and which was the cheapest form, and that was the reason why she ended up dead. Anyway, good. So thanks so much for watching. I shall do longer videos on this subject, I think, actually. No, maybe not longer than this, but documentary type videos on this. Today, I had this experience. So I got up. I wanted to be on the first train. Like yesterday, I got on the first train to Whitechapel, and I filmed it in the whilst it was raining and in the dark. There was nobody around. I thought it was great because it was really very atmospheric. Today I got on the train, so it was Sunday, so the first train was later. And anyway, so I got as far as Dagenham East, and there was what called an incident on the line. And I think somebody decided either to take a shortcut across the railway line and touch the live rail, or decided to end their life, or whatever, on the railway line. And so the trains just all stopped, couldn't get there anyway. And so anyway, after about an hour, I mean, I started telling people to get on the bus after about 20 minutes, but after an hour, I just sort of gave up. And so unfortunately, I didn't actually get anything today. But I think doing it in the early hours is the best because there's no one around, and also gives a bit more of an atmospheric look to it. I mean, some places, like for example, when I went to Berchtesgaden, filmed there where Hitler was, I think that really needed a nice day, which I was granted. So you have this contrast between the evil and the nice weather around. Or indeed, when I filmed at Treblinka, showing how attractive it is, the area around it, and you contrast that with the evil of the place. Okay, so thanks very much for watching. And tomorrow, if I can, depending on what time I get back, I'll see if I can do another one. Anyway, all the best. Bye for now. Oh, that's how I turn it off. I press here.